Good evening, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Vargas. Providence can finally breathe a little easier tonight. With those words, Mayor Brett Smiley delivered the message that a nervous city and a nation had been awaiting for nearly a week. The alleged gunman in the deadly Brown University shooting on Saturday and in the assassination of a professor at MIT had been found dead in Salem, New Hampshire. Police discovered his body inside a storage facility there. It is 85 miles north of the Brown campus. The suspect is identified as Claudio Neves Valente. The New Hampshire medical examiner revealed late today that Valente is estimated to have died by suicide on Tuesday, December 16th, 2 days before his body was discovered. Random acts of violence always create a thirst for an explanation, and now one is just beginning to come into focus. Valente was a 48-year-old Portuguese national and a former Brown University student. Police say he attended the Ivy League college more than 2 decades ago for about a year. And Valente knew and studied with the MIT professor he allegedly shot and killed just 2 days after the Brown attack. Police say Valente drove to the Brown campus to Brookline, Massachusetts, and gunned the professor, Nuno Loureiro, in his home. The two men both attended the same academic program in Portugal between 1995 and 2000. Both graduated with high marks, but it was the shooter, gunman, Valente, who had the highest scores. The case wrapped up late last night after a series of fast-moving developments after days of seemingly glacial progress in the manhunt. Local and state police, along with federal authorities, converged on that Salem storage facility. And now we know what was happening behind all those elliptical press conferences. Police were tracking down the rental car that Valente was driving. They found evidence it was near the MIT professor's home Monday night when the professor was shot. And they tracked it further north to Salem, Massachusetts, and that storage facility. Now that police finally have their gunman, the question is why? Why shoot up a class of innocent students studying for a final? Why shoot a man with whom he once studied decades ago? What we can tell you tonight is how the break in the case happened, and it's from a very unlikely source. A homeless man in Providence who goes by the name of John, who encountered Valente as he cased the campus before the shooting and who used Reddit to post his tips to the public. Our Brian Enton is in Providence tonight, where he's been tracking all these fast-moving developments. Brian, the story of John is quite remarkable.
It is. This whole thing has been a wild ride, especially over the last 24 hours, Elizabeth. We just learned, and this is new, that Valente was dead for 2 days inside that storage unit when police moved in last night and discovered his body, and they say that he took his own life. You mentioned motive. That's the big question here. He only went to Brown for about a year. He was trying to get his PhD. That apparently didn't work out. Why go after the innocent kids now in the engineering building? And then with the professor, they obviously knew each other. There was a connection. They went to school together in Portugal 2 decades ago. Was there some kind of jealousy? He was a very, very successful professor at MIT. We still just don't know the answers to those questions. But perhaps the most interesting thing in all of this is what you mentioned, John, the homeless man. I have learned that he is also a Brown graduate, graduated several decades ago, and actually lived, and this is kind of unbelievable, but lived in the basement of the engineering building. How that was allowed or if they knew, we don't know. But he had seen this guy. He saw the suspect in the bathroom. They had some kind of strange altercation. It was called cat and mouse in the affidavit. He followed him outside, and then he ended up giving the description of the car to police, posting to Reddit, and providing really the most important information to bring this whole thing together. And I'll tell you, Elizabeth, just walking around Providence today and even looking on Reddit, there are a lot of people who strongly believe that John deserves the $50,000 reward. They think that Brown should give John some kind of housing so he doesn't have to live in the basement of the engineering building anymore, and forgive his student debt if he still has any. So there's a lot of support for this man right now.
Yeah,
Elizabeth?
I'll bet there is. There's a whole campaign on social media on fire that he get this reward. Brian Enton reporting live on all these fast-moving developments. Thank you. High-profile crime stories can turn local municipal officials into household names, and Providence Mayor Brett Smiley may have just become one. From the immediate aftermath of the campus shooting through 6 tense days of the manhunt, Mayor Smiley has been a constant presence throughout, thrust into the national spotlight, helming the often raucous press briefings. I spoke to Mayor Smiley a short time ago on how they finally cracked the case. Mayor Smiley, obviously everybody wants to know why this man would open fire in a classroom at Brown University before then going up to MIT, where he allegedly killed this professor. Do we have any more information about a possible motive here? What led him to open fire in this classroom?
We don't have any information to update anybody on now, but the investigation continues hard at work. The FBI is taking a leadership role, and Providence Police continue to support whatever evidence was seized in New Hampshire last night is still being processed, but certainly my community wants to know why Providence, why Brown, why this classroom, and that closure is really important for all of us.
We do know that the suspect was formerly a graduate student of engineering at Brown University, or physics at Brown University, that he actually studied in that building, so he would be familiar with the layout.
What the president of Brown said last night was they don't know specifically that he was studying in that building, but that it was highly likely because the time when he was a student at Brown, physics classes would have been in that building. So it's a fair assumption, although we don't have his actual attendance records in a classroom.
And can you clarify how the case broke open, specifically about this person who provided this key information? It was the same person who posted information on Reddit the day after the shooting?
Yeah, we didn't know those two things were connected at first. We had a tip on Reddit that had to do with a vehicle that ended up being central to the investigation. Separately, through door-to-door canvassing of the neighborhood, we had secured video footage of a second individual that we saw come into conversation with what we now know as the shooter. And so we put out that picture saying we wanted to talk to that person. About an hour after putting out that photo, that individual, now known as John, came forward, walked up to a Providence police officer, said, "I understand there's a picture of me out there and you want to talk to me." When we interviewed John, he disclosed that he was the original Reddit poster on the vehicle tip. Now, there were many things happening on Reddit, so there might have been other tips on Reddit, but the tip with respect to the vehicle that ended up becoming linchpin to unraveling all of this came from him.
So it came from this man named John, who was the same man whose picture you released. When did you first see that tip on Reddit that John posted?
Investigators saw it as soon as it was posted. We were monitoring all social media channels and other online sources, including Reddit. And you know, part of the challenge of this investigation was there was a lot to sort through. Credible, not, highly likely to very unlikely, but it was all reviewed. And because we had so much law enforcement helping, led by Providence Police, and I'm very proud of that, but with great assistance from the state police, federal partners, we were combing through all of that.
But that tip on Reddit came before the killing of the MIT professor.
That's right, but we didn't have enough to act on it. We didn't have a connection between what we now know as the shooter and the vehicle. We didn't have license plates. We didn't have enough to put it all together. We had these disparate pieces of a puzzle that the witness who then came forward helped put all of these pieces together for us in a way such that the picture suddenly became clear. From the moment he came in to us discovering the individual who had taken his own life last night was about 24 hours. It moved fast from then.
And how did you get to the storage shed? What information took you there?
The vehicle, they had switched, the shooter had switched license plates, which we were able to piece together. And through license plate readers and cell phone data, and then financial transactions that were reviewed, where it was determined that there was a storage rental space in New Hampshire that had been rented based upon the financial data, we were able to piece these various pieces together, both some pings on license plate readers, some cell phone pings, and then financial data of a rental agreement.
So I mean, I just, there were so many days when you were out there in front of those microphones with very little to say, except more surveillance video from neighborhood security, ring cameras, that sort of thing.
Right.
Can you walk me through what it was like for you and the police and all those officers who were working around the clock when that case broke? What that moment was like when you thought, we got him?
Yeah, I mean, there was extraordinary pressure on our police department, our partners. I felt that pressure personally. Maybe around day 3 of the investigation, my community started to get, pretty anxious, and it felt like it was dragging. And then the case broke open, and so when we got that witness to come forward was a moment of great progress that was a relief. And then certainly last night, when we determined that the individual responsible for this horrific act of violence, the worst in a generation in Providence, had ended his own life, and that we could at least close this chapter to begin the healing process was like an enormous weight had been lifted from our whole city's shoulders.
You are getting a lot of kudos today for this resolution to this investigation, even as we await more answers on what led this man to do this. But you've also had a lot of criticism from people in your community, particularly for going out shortly after the shooting and reassuring people in Providence that the city was safe, even while you had a mass shooter who was on the loose. Do you believe that's fair criticism? How can you assure people the city's safe when, in fact, there's a guy who shot 11 people who's running around and hasn't been caught?
Yeah, I mean, that was the hardest question throughout this whole process. And it is a very difficult conversation for me to have with my neighbors, which is what this is really about. This is a tight-knit community. We all know each other, I think, as it's come up a few times. I live in the neighborhood where the shooting occurred. And but the fact of the matter is that this community is strong, it is resilient, and kids needed to go to school. People needed to go to work. We needed to find the strength to start to take steps forward. And so we tried to support them through those early steps with a tremendous show of law enforcement. On every street corner, there was a police officer, and we got a lot of help from our neighbors here in Rhode Island, which we're very grateful for. And the people of Providence really came together in a strong way. And so I'm really proud of them and proud of this community.
There's been a lot of criticism as well of Brown University for the fact that there were no security cameras in or around that classroom that caught any video or footage of this gunman as he walked into the classroom, opened fire, and then managed to walk out of the classroom unseen. Do you think Brown University needs to up its security, increase the number of cameras, even if students might be ideologically opposed to that? Doesn't public safety trump political ideology in that case?
I think Brown should do exactly what I'm going to do here in the city of Providence, which is we're going to do a full review of this incident, of our response. I'm really proud of the Providence Police Department. I think they did exceptional work, but I also think we can always do better. So we're going to look back at what we did, see where there are areas of improvement, see where there are places where additional tools or technology might have helped us. We certainly pray that something like this never happens again in our community, but something's going to happen, and we want to be well prepared for it. Brown should do the same, and I think they will.
And do you think, are you completely happy with the way this investigation was handled from the very beginning, even with its missteps, like detaining a person of interest who turned out to have nothing to do with the crime, assuring the public that everything was fine and you're safe, you can go to school, you can go about your lives, even while a gunman's on the loose?
I am entirely satisfied with the police work that happened here in the last 5 days, and the misstep on Sunday was not that the person of interest turned out to not be the person. We had multiple viable leads, and if we had gotten a credible lead and not run it down, that would have been a violation of our duty. What the misstep was is that, and I'll speak for myself, I allowed myself to think that maybe this was the person. I think the community allowed itself to think that maybe this was the person. And so it was a real disappointment when it turned out not to be. But we never put all of our eggs in one basket. The investigation continued down multiple pathways. And over the course of 5 days, there were several leads that turned out to be dead ends. One of them didn't, and that's how we got to resolution and were able to provide some closure for the victims and the survivors and really the whole city.
All right, Mayor Smiley, thank you so much from Providence, Rhode Island. Really appreciate you joining us tonight.
Thank you.
And coming up for us, the Justice Department just released more than 300,000 pages of Jeffrey Epstein's files. We're going through them one by one, and we'll have the latest on what we're reading between the heavy redactions. And later, the interstellar comet called 3I Atlas. Some have speculated it's an alien spacecraft. Well, now as it makes its closest approach to Earth, can the rumors finally be put to rest? The Justice Department has finally released some of the highly anticipated Epstein files. More than 300,000 pages of documents related to the late convicted sex offender were made public today. They include photos, flight logs, grand jury testimony, and a lot of heavy redactions. Among the photos is this one of pop superstar Michael Jackson with Epstein, and this dinner photo showing Mick Jagger and former President Bill Clinton together. NewsNation is digging through the documents. We'll give you the latest breaking news as we find it. But if you think this means it's now case closed, think again. The DOJ was under orders by law to release all the Epstein files by midnight tonight. And even though the DOJ released 300,000 files today, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche said there are at least a few 100,000 more that have still not been released. Blanche says the DOJ needs more time to make redactions to protect victims. He says the rest of the files will be released on a rolling basis over the next few weeks. Some lawmakers say that violates the law that was signed by President Trump 30 days ago. So now some top Democrats, including Senator Chuck Schumer, are threatening serious legal consequences. Let's go right now to NewsNation's Joe Khalil, live for us on Capitol Hill. Joe, break down what you're learning and what Democrats are threatening.
So first, I think we just have to say, and you set it up well, there are two real storylines here. One is what is in these files that we can see and that we can actually learn. We're going to get on that first. There's also the story about what is not in these files or what is heavily redacted, because that is also sparking a nerve. When it comes to what's in these files, we've seen dozens of new photos we haven't seen before of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell with very high-profile people, celebrities, people like Mick Jagger and Michael Jackson, like you showed, also like British royalty and actors. All of that we sort of knew was happening. I want to highlight specifically two for the public interest, and that is President Clinton and President Trump in these files. We've got new images now, some showing President Clinton in a pool with Ghislaine Maxwell and a person who is redacted. Now, we know some of the redactions are because people are underage or because people are victims. We don't know anything about these people in these specific photos other than they're redacted, but this is getting a lot of attention here. Then President Trump. You see pictures of what look like a drawer with several photos in them of President Trump before he was president, younger version of himself, and several women there, as you see, some of them not wearing a whole lot of clothing. President Trump is also referenced several times in flight logs, and in some cases, even with his former wife, Marla, and his daughter, Tiffany, who would have been a child at the time, and a nanny traveling along with Epstein that were in these files. Beyond that, there is a lot of material in here that is just uncomfortable, sadly, as we might expect. There's pornographic material, magazines, that type of thing, sex toys, images like that. There are also a lot of references to massages. There is a Massage for Dummies book that was highlighted here that our team found. There was also a letter handwritten talking about a younger girl who was an artist, and she took pictures of her two sisters, 16 years old and 12 years old, that Jeffrey Epstein apparently stole, according to this note, and then threatened to burn the girl's house down if she told that Jeffrey Epstein had stolen these pictures and had given them to clients, as it says in the note. So it's just a lot of really disturbing things. Congressman Ro Khanna today, who was one of the driving forces behind releasing these photos, has been in touch with the Epstein victims and survivors for quite some time. He talked about what they want to see out of these documents and what they want to come out of this release. This is what he said earlier today.
From the survivors who I've talked to, they are appreciative that finally they're being heard, they're being seen, and documents are coming out. But what they care most about is that the documents come out that expose the rich and powerful men who either raped them, abused them, or were at these sex parties watching them be abused.
And Elizabeth, just want to mention, there are whole sections that are completely redacted. There's one grand jury report. Presumably, there would be a lot of interesting and important information in there. 119 pages, literally every page of that blacked out, redacted, and there are several files like that. So again, people have already been expressing some frustration over those.
Yeah, I can imagine. All right. Thanks, Joe, so much for that report. Let us know if there's anything else you see in those files jumps out and we need to break in and report it. Let's get reaction now from Florida Republican Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna. She's a member of the House Oversight Committee. She chaired the task force on declassification of federal secrets. Congresswoman, thank you so much for being here. You're a critical voice because you were among the very first in Congress to push for these files to be made public. The law that President Trump passed, that you passed and President Trump signed, was very clear that all documents were to be released at midnight tonight. That has not happened. Is the DOJ in violation of the law?
Well, as of right now, what was written into that initial discharge petition that we then all voted for is that information publicly released except for information pertaining to victims and pedophilic information that shouldn't belong in public circulation. And so I will always weigh on the side of caution in protecting victims and obviously not wanting that information circulated, as well as not wanting pedophilic information circulated as well. And so obviously frustrating that it hasn't been released this evening, but also to understand that the DOJ is essentially undermanned and understaffed, and that this information has to be gone through very meticulously to ensure that that information is not released. Now, I will say this. No other administration was willing to even bring this information forward. And after talking to several of the victims myself, as well as being in the oversight hearing where you had both Democrats and Republicans present, victims had stated that they had actually asked for their information under the Biden administration and it didn't even receive information back or were outright denied. And so I'm very happy that obviously this information is coming out now. But obviously, as you're seeing, Jeffrey Epstein was a terrible individual. Ghislaine Maxwell, terrible individual. And obviously, there are a lot of people that were unfortunately in his orbit of influence. And so I'm not surprised to see some of these photos come out.
Yeah, the DOJ had 30 days to do its job here and follow the law and release all the documents. They have not released all the documents. They released a fraction of those documents. You have been for months calling on Attorney General Pam Bondi to, quote, stop stonewalling and release all the Epstein files. Is she still stonewalling?
Mm-hmm. Well, they did say that the documents are coming out, and they're coming out on a rolling basis. And so what we found in the past, specifically, if you're looking at other declassifications like Kennedy, Martin Luther King, and RFK, is they actually have to compile all the documents. So sometimes, although there's a documented timeline, there is the understanding that there might be a little bit of a leniency in regards to the actual release date. Now, again, yes, frustrating, it's not all released on the same day, but we also saw the same thing happening with JFK, MLK, and RFK, of which they did follow through, and we did ultimately receive all the documents. However, I will say this. We would not be seeing this information come out if it was any other administration. And I can tell you, even just on working on other cases, specifically like working under Garland when he didn't want to respond to Congress's subpoena, we didn't have any response at all from them. And so this is definitely at least the silver lining in the cloud. But
to be clear, you had to vote on this, pass this law. President Trump had to sign this law. I mean, Attorney General Bondi did not just voluntarily turn this stuff over. She'd been promising to do this for quite some time and then failing to do so for quite some time. And we just had Joe Khalil reference that what was released today was so heavily redacted. Congresswoman, look at some of these pages. I mean, this is insane.
Oh, I have looked at some of the pages, yeah.
How is this
but the information that's redacted, yeah, so the information that has been redacted, though, is exactly the information that everyone voted on, and we are not going to release information of victims and or pornographic material. So if you see faces blurred out in certain photos, or you're seeing certain images not being shown,
that's not what I just showed you,
because there is literally... Well, I can't see what you're showing me because I'm on a live feed here. But what I have seen online and what the redactions are, what the redactions that I have seen are literally because it falls into those two categories. Now, if we find out that that's not the case, which I highly doubt because they know that we can ask for that information, we can see that information, then that's a different story. But ultimately, we're not going to release that information. That's something that we all came to as a general conclusion and that you don't want to do.
Finally, your colleague, Congressman Thomas Massie, says that there are the names of at least 20 men in these files who have been credibly accused of committing sex crimes alongside Epstein. Do you believe him? The FBI says that's not true. What do you think?
I mean, look, I would not be surprised. However, we are still waiting as Congress to receive information from victims of the names that they promised to deliver to us. I also understand, though, that gets into different complexities because they're actively right now in a lawsuit with the Deutsche Bank for not putting a stop to the trafficking and money scheme behind this. And so I understand that there's certain legal implications to that. And so if they want to deliver names on behalf of oversight, we're happy to take them and happy to follow up. But we have not received those names yet.
Okay. Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I know this is something you've been really at the forefront of for many, many months. I really appreciate you coming on. Happy holidays if I don't speak to you before then. All right. Coming up for us, I'm going to speak with comedian Paul Mercurio. He interviewed both Rob Reiner and his son, Nick Reiner. What did the beloved director say that he felt he had done wrong? Plus, Matt Murphy joins us on whether Nick Reiner could realistically pursue an insanity defense in light of developments today. We'll have it all next. Hollywood is still reeling from the horrific murders of Rob and Michelle Reiner. The legendary director and his wife were butchered in their Brentwood home over the weekend. Their bodies discovered in the master bedroom by their daughter, Romy. The cause of death noted in official records as, quote, multiple sharp force injuries. Romy's brother, Nick Reiner, has been charged with their murders. He appeared in court yesterday in shackles and a blue suicide vest. He did not show any sign of emotion. He simply stared ahead until he was led away. The shocking nature of this case of a son accused of killing his much-loved and well-known parents obviously raises the question, why? Well, a newly surfaced interview gives us a little bit of a window into Nick's relationship with both his mom and his dad. In 2015, Rob Reiner and his son Nick worked together on a movie called Being Charlie. It was based on Nick Reiner's own addiction and mental health struggles. Around the time of the movie's release, Rob and Nick went on a podcast with comedian Paul Mercurio. It was during that podcast that Rob Reiner defended his son Nick against critics calling him a Nepo baby.
It's only hard to reveal that stuff to then get told you're a spoiled white rich kid, and it's like, okay, maybe all these things.
Well, who would say that to you? Not your dad.
No, but the world, listen, I had to talk to him about this. Listen, I know what it's like to be the son of, and to have people assume certain things about you, and it's very, very difficult. They don't know. They don't know what he's experienced. They don't know what he's gone through. They don't know why he's done what he does.
I wrote a movie about doing drugs and having a hard time, and people still,
people have really said stuff.
Rob Reiner then went on to express he felt guilty at how he treated Nick while he was in the throes of his addiction.
I think that's where we made the mistake, is that we didn't trust that he had that.
If you supported him as opposed to you were punishing him.
Yes, we were definitely.
Well, meaning like
punishing
grounding him. You can't use the car. You got to stay home. All that
just
stuff.
The whole idea of throwing him into a rehab place. Just saying okay, and there's a punitive aspect.
But if you hadn't done that, how could you treat him on? You couldn't treat him on your own.
No, not on our own. But we could have maybe just worked with him with a therapist, and been a little bit more active in that way. I think we just overreacted.
Joining me now is Paul Mercurio, who is host of that podcast, which is now called Inside Out with Paul Mercurio, and Matt Murphy, former senior deputy district attorney in Orange County, California. He spent 2 decades prosecuting all the most notorious murder cases. Matt, I want to start with you because we have a couple new developments today. There's reporting on TMZ, of all places, which is sensational but often accurate, that Nick had recently been in a rehab, a sort of, that specialized in treating well-to-do clients, had diagnosed him with schizophrenia and had begun him on a course of medication with which he was struggling. This has got to be ammunition for Nick's brand new high-powered defense attorney, Alan Jackson.
Well, it may have come from the defense because they haven't revealed their sources. I think that's the first salvo, and look, we're going to deal with years of information coming out like that. Alan Jackson's an excellent defense lawyer, and right now he's got to try to wrestle with the narrative. There's a lot of public outrage about this, and people are trying to sort it out and figure out exactly what happened. And we're going to see some substantial continuances, but that's exactly the kind of thing that a defense attorney is going to need and want if he's going to go what's called NGRI, or not guilty by reason of insanity.
But that's such a high bar, is saying you're schizophrenic. And by the way, he wasn't walking around, in split personality. I mean, he was functioning normally enough. He did get tossed out of a Christmas party the night of the murders.
That's right.
But for asking inappropriate questions. But, is that enough? Is that a high enough bar that he was on brand new medication for schizophrenia and it was like screwing up his head?
Well, ultimately it'll be the jury's call on that. But the thing about it is, remember, if the reporting is true, we've got blood in the hotel, right? Then that's all going to come back forensically to Nick Reiner. I guarantee that. Mm-hmm. So what are the options for the defense? You've got something like this going for them, and it's not a whodunit. They're going to be able to prove that Nick is the one.
It's all they've got, but the question is it going to be enough? I think not reasoned by guilty of insanity. I've seen a lot of murder defendants who looked a lot more insane than Nick Reiner, and who were found guilty.
Who have been found legally sane, like my Nicholson case out of Newport Beach, which was a young man, very similar, very wealthy, murdered both of his parents and the housekeeper. The jury just found him legally sane, and he's set for sentencing next week. But every case is a statistic of one. And look, Nathan Hochman's a great DA, and he's going to get a really good team on this. They know Alan Jackson. The judges know Alan Jackson. Mm-hmm. I think we're going to see a very, very fascinating legal process play out in this case.
All right, Paul, you sat for this very revealing interview with Rob and Nick together. I was so struck by the clip we played where Rob talked about feeling so guilty for not listening to Nick and instead listening to the people with the diplomas on the wall. As someone who knows this experience well, you're not going to listen to the addict.
Right.
You shouldn't listen to the addict.
Right. But so what that particular shot tells me is something bigger, right? Which is that we're parents are watching. Biggest fear I have is making mistakes with my kid. Mm-hmm. And the hardest thing to do is admit you make mistakes. And I had in front of me 2 people that had healed at that time. They had been through hell and back with this addiction. They were both very, very honest about their shortcomings. Mm-hmm. Rob talking about, and Nick talking about how he didn't really understand his father because his father was quiet off stage, off camera, until he started working with him on the movie. The movie had an incredible healing power for both of them, and also they made it to heal others going through this. So I give Rob a lot of credit for admitting that he had a mistake, because you can't heal unless you start to open up and be honest and want to be learning from each other. And so what I found, and the irony in this is, the earlier clip that you played talks about the famous...
growing up the son of a famous father.
Well, here's the irony. The problem got healed through the thing that created the problem. The problem was show business. So what did they do? They made a movie about this problem, were open about it, and that movie, at that time, I can't speak to what happened after that, healed them. And I detected nothing but love, mutual respect. Not easy as parents to defer to your child. There's always that inherent superior
Did you think Nick was sober at that point?
To me, he seemed it. I'm not an expert.
Because he went on a podcast a few weeks later to say he was actually still smoking
I can't speak
pot
to
and
that.
drinking.
I mean, what I saw was he was present, he was open, maybe started out in the conversation a little shy, but what I saw were just two people that had worked through this clearly, to me, through therapy, and they were better for it, and they had a social responsibility, which I really admired, to make the film to help other people and families going through this.
Yeah, and possibly heal their own family in the process.
They certainly were through that, yeah.
I only have 10 seconds, but what was your reaction when you heard about the murders, having sat down with them to do this interview?
It was a complete 180 of what I saw in the room. Like, if you told me, asked me 10 minutes after that interview this would happen, I'd be like, you're crazy.
Never in a million years.
Yeah, and I think I read people pretty well. There was nothing in that room where you're like, it was a beautiful relationship at that time.
At that time, at that moment, who knows?
That's all I can speak to, but it was really a beautiful thing, and I can only hope I have that kind of relationship with my son.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
See you both. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
All right, coming up for us, the interstellar comet called 3I Atlas. Yes, it's back, on the show at least. It's saying its final goodbye to Earth before leaving our solar system. So, has our friend Avi Loeb been convinced it's just a comet and not aliens out to get us after all? We're going to ask him when he joins me next. The epic saga of the interstellar comet known as 3I Atlas is nearing its end, but not before it goes out without a metaphorical bang. The comet just made its closest pass by Earth overnight, coming within 167 million miles of us. That close. That journey should give us some of the best images yet of the interstellar object. 3I Atlas will be visible for the next few months before it leaves our solar system forever. Our next guest has gone viral several times for his hypothesis that the comet could actually be an alien spacecraft with, quote, hostile intentions. The majority of the scientific community agrees it's just a comet. But has Avi Loeb been convinced? Harvard professor Avi Loeb joins us now. So, Avi, do you think it's a comet or do you think it's a spaceship?
Well, so far, so good. 3I Atlas did not maneuver or display any unusual activity when it came closest to Earth. Some Earthlings might find it insulting, but the truth of the matter is that with its initial speed, it must have taken it a billion years or many billions of years to cross the Milky Way galaxy. And so when it started its journey, there were no humans on Earth, and Jupiter must have been the center of attention in the solar system. We arrived late to the party, only over the past 10th of a % of the Milky Way history. Given that, we should not be surprised that interstellar visitors did not plan to dance with us. Now, with respect to the nature of this object, there is still unsolved mysteries because we see a jet coming from the object in all the recent images, stretched out to about 1 million kilometers in the direction of the sun. And that was never seen for comets from the solar system.
What does that tell you?
Well, we don't know because we don't understand it. So
you're saying it's doing unusual stuff, but you think it's just a comet?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, given all the data we have, I would agree that it's most likely natural, but there are still a lot of things we don't understand about it, and it didn't look like comets that we are familiar with. So let's try and figure them out in the coming months. And then, of course, it will get closest to Jupiter on March 16th. By the way, it had a rendezvous with two spacecraft that were human-made, JUICE and the Europa Clipper, and that happened just over the past month, and it will arrive in March 2026 to Jupiter, whereas these spacecraft will arrive in 2030 and 2031, just to show you how much faster it is, which means that I would love to actually hitchhike and go on a ride with this very fast interstellar visitor, because it will exit the solar system well before Voyager, that we launched in the 70s.
So you have a few more months when we can get some good images of this thing. You now say it is a comet, but you also point out it's done a lot of very unusual things. Does that raise the question, where did it come from? Is it made of a different kind of substance? I mean, what are the still unresolved questions in your mind?
The main unresolved question is, why does it have this jet pointed at the sun? That it also rotates with the rotation axis in the direction of the sun at large distances. That's also very unusual. And it came in the plane of the planets around the sun. Again, an unusual fact. I would suggest monitoring it as it comes close to Jupiter. It arrives just at the distance where Jupiter's gravity dominates over the sun's gravity. If we don't see it doing anything unusual, then I would conclude that it must be natural, but let's keep an eye on it.
All right, you're still holding out hope, as well as your metaphorical finger out to hitchhike with the very fast 3-Eye Atlas. Avi Loeb, always great to have you on the show. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Thanks for having me.
All right, coming up for us, the Justice Department is releasing more and more of these files on the Jeffrey Epstein case. I just spoke with Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna about it. What does Chris Cuomo think? He joins me live next. All right, as we told you, about 300,000 files have been released from the Epstein case, but that's hundreds of thousands of files still yet to be released. And many of them look like this, as I showed Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna. Chris Cuomo joins me now live. I think a lot of people who are hoping to learn something in these files are going to be sorely disappointed. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I think that the people who wanted something on the left are going to blame the redactions. And the people on the right are the ones I'm actually curious about, because ordinarily the analysis ends. So is this a legal situation? Are there legal consequences? The DOJ admitted that they're violating the law, which says you shall release today. They said we're not. We're going to. So is there a legal consequence? No. So it's just politics? Yes. All right. So then it would usually be over, but maybe not with the Epstein files. MAGA wanted these first, and to be fair, most. Okay, the left only got into them once it became a bad thing for Trump. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
If they wanted to make it about the survivors, which is absolutely the right and noble justification, they had years. And the survivors, as we both know from reporting on it, were desperate for allies in Congress.
Yeah.
But only now, and we know why. But what is MAGA going to do about this? That's who I want to talk to
It'll
tonight,
be very...
is
Listen,
people on the right.
Anna Paulina Luna, who's been one of the leading voices in the Republican caucus to get these files out there, quote, unredacted, was very willing to give the administration and the DOJ a lot of grace. Well, they'll get to it. They're doing it. They're in the process of doing it. They had to redact the names of victims. But I don't know. There are so many pages that look like this that it's hard to believe that all those pages are just names of victims. I think I'll be really curious in the next few days to see.
Well, good, because I'm going to get to...
Yeah,
I'm going
you're
to satisfy your curiosity.
Burchett. Yeah.
Yeah, because Burchett, I think, is more... I think that Anna Paulina, maybe we're getting close to Christmas, and she's in high Christian grace mode. Burchett is also a Christian, but I think he's feeling more Old Testament more than New Testament. His is an angry God when it comes to not releasing the Epstein files, because, look, it makes him look bad. It makes him look bad.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about it.
All right. Have a good
All right,
show
my
and a
friend.
great weekend.